where are you located?
I'm located in Jodhpur, Rajasthan, India. Rajasthan. Have you been to Rajasthan?
I have not been to Rajasthan.
Okay.
I was only in Trivandrum.
Okay.
Way south.
Ma'am, let me start by introducing myself. My name is Mehak and I'm an IP attorney. So I just graduated in May 2020 and I work mostly in copyrights and trademarks. And I'm at that stage of my career where, I tell my clients that if you don't have like an IP protection, you are at loss. So,
oh.
So I'm still at that age, but I like reading a lot about, what's going on in the world, in terms of copyright. So that's where I came across you. And either why not just cold email? Like this is one of my very first successful cold emails.
I don't know who else you're emailing.
But thank you so much for being here.
Sure.
Moving on to you, ma'am, I did like proper wiki research on you, googling on you, and it says that you are a cartoonist and an animator and a free culture activist. And I think I've been binge watching a lot of your works, and Sita Sings the Blues is like, it's very touchy to me. There's this propaganda I think it was an educational propaganda in India where, every Sunday on, like when I was little, every Sunday we were made to watch like animated Ramayana. So that was the last time that I watched Ramayana or even, study about it. And then I moved on to watching yours and it was like a shift. And, that's why I've not watched your other feature film, Cedar Masochism. That's because I still do not have a perspective on the Exodus. So I think I'll wait to form a perspective and then have you come and shatter that perspective.
Yes, that was a problem with that was a side of the release of the film that I didn't like, which is so many people saw it, they had not seen any Ramayanas before. Okay. And so Sita Sings the Blues was not supposed to be introduction to the Ramayana. But it was supposed to be a commentary on it. It was supposed to be a riff on the Ramayana, but to have people, Westerners have that be their first exposure to the Ramayana was not something that I wanted.
I don't know about the West, ma'am, but in the Indian community, what you tried to say was something that every female, while she was, little watching Ramayana, was thinking about it all the time, but she couldn't say it.
Right. No, it was for people that were familiar with the Ramayana, right? Like that's who get the joke. That's who get the whole thing.
Yeah, that's why I'm waiting to watch, your other feature film. I won't understand the joke about it. Your commentary on it. So, ma'am, that's a research that I did on you through the internet, but I would like to know, something about you from, your own mouth. So what are the layers to you?
Skin, epidermis, subepidermis.
Up here, because up here is all this.
I can't say, like, I can't analyze myself. Somebody else has to analyze me. So you can ask me questions, but they have to be shallower than
I have like big, like,
who I am.
Questions for you. Let's see how much can we cover today.
Yeah.
So you said that you were in India. So, how was that experience?
Oh, it was great. A lot of Americans have life-changing experiences in India. And yeah, well, of course, my life changed because my husband stopped loving me when I was there. That's a big thing. But let's see, this was in 2002 and it was in Trivandrum. I try to specify I was just in Trivandrum in Kerala.
Yes.
I was not in India. I was in a specific place in India. So there's a lot of India that I've never met. You probably know that the food in Kerala is extraordinarily delicious.
I've never been to Kerala. I've only like the southern I've been to is Bangalore, which is in Karnataka. I think one state there.
Yeah, the food is amazing. And by the way, I went back there in
2012, I think,
or 2014, I think.
12 or 14.
I think it was 2014. Yeah. And yeah, the food was so good again. You know, I as long as it takes a few years to get over missing it, then it's been a few years. So whatever, I just live in
But in a
sensory
way,
deprivation now. Hmm?
yes, in a way that, the sensation or the stimuli that, you talked about New York also in an article. I think that's very close to India. It's a feeling that there are too many stimuli from this side, that side. And, if you're acquainted with the place, then you feel it calm. But, if you're just visiting, it's too much information, all your nerves. Did you
Well, it
feel
was
that?
hard. It was hard to, the traffic was what I couldn't navigate. So the last time I was there, I was going out for dosas, of course, with
Certainly.
colleagues from the conference I was at. And this guy was just laughing at me because I was so terrified of the traffic. And he was just like, look, they're not going that fast. Here's how you walk on a Trivandrum road, because we have sidewalks here, right? And we just
Yes.
stay out of the traffic. And apparently there's this whole way of navigating it when you're on foot that is completely foreign to me. And there's just a million things like that, right? That, oh, I got to say, like, one thing, I don't know how much it's changed in the last 20 years, but Americans especially, we rented an apartment there.
Yes.
And, here you do your own house cleaning, you do your own laundry, you do all that stuff.
Yes.
And there you're supposed to support other people doing these services for you. It freaks us out. It is so, and so we're horrible, right? Like we're trying, we have our American idea of being good people, which does not fit into the ecosystem there. And we're just neurotic. So, we have issues. Americans just have issues about hiring people to do services that we're supposed to do ourselves.
Ma'am, this is an inside joke in India that, when you're in India, you live like a king. And when, students go to abroad, they have to work, and it's an inside joke that, you get all these services here, people cook for you and, they treat you in a certain way. And then you go there for a better future, but you're doing all those activities. So it's a like Indian joke here.
Yeah. Anyway, it doesn't make for good citizens. We were not good citizens in that system. We didn't know how to be, and we were too neurotic. And I still have like, that was weird. That was hard. And there, yeah.
India, how did India help your art?
Oh, well, there's just art everywhere there, everywhere. Again, I'm just talking about Trivandrum and Kerala. Yes. But just like every flat surface had a painting on it. Everything was colorful, and it's like people think they have to be artists. They think they have to be a special class of person in order to make art. And people were very uninhibited there. And I guess there's holidays where part of the holiday is making art, like the patterns on the floor. Yeah. Yeah, so everybody just does it. Maybe not everybody, but it's all over the place there.
Yes, it's very common. I think throughout India, graffiti art is also very common. So the good graffiti and the bad, like artistically, no graffiti is good or bad that way. But artistically, there's this good graffiti and bad graffiti where, lovers write their names here on walls.
Yeah. Yeah, well, same here. We have mostly, I don't really love graffiti, but yeah, anyway, it was just very artistic. And then to be in a place where people were, for lack of a better word, pantheistic, after, where you have multiple gods, which, from a American or European, the sort of history that we're taught is like the evolution of religion ends up with a single God, right? It ends up with the Abrahamic God. And when we are taught about multiple gods, we're taught about ancient Greece and ancient Rome and maybe ancient Egypt. So we just think of it as this ancient thing. And then I was there and it was like, this is not ancient history. This is right now.
33
And
crore gods.
yeah. And I loved it. I was like, you know, and it's not like anyone was keeping this a secret, but just like the way, you know, it was just a cultural difference. And it just didn't occur to me that, you know, I could actually be immersed in this environment where people were doing that. I loved it.
But you actually did immerse in that environment, because it's very clear from, your work in, Sita Sings the Blues. And you were part of an Indian community, like you said that you rented a place there in India also. And so I'm sure you were acquainted with like an Indian community. So how did they react to your work?
Well, so, you know, I went from Trivandrum to New York City, where there's a lot of expatriate Indians, South Asians in general. Well, so while I was working on the film, I mean, there was a community in and around New York and New Jersey of people that were familiar with the stuff, that were giving me feedback.
A lot of the team
that was
members
good.
were also like Indians in the
A lot of what?
Your team members.
Oh yeah, the collaborators. Yes, for sure. I mean, there's huge South Asian community in and around New York, which is great.
How did they receive your work?
Very well. I mean, it was mostly very well, and then occasionally one person would be really furious and outraged, but mostly really positive, because they get the jokes, right? Like, you know, other Americans were not familiar with this and didn't know what to make of it. I'm pleased that people get something out of it, even when they have not had any familiarity with the Ramayana before. But yeah, definitely people who are already familiar with it.
Correlation that you draw with your own story, and that's a story of a lot of people who are in that kind of relationship, like the bigger, where there's this thing about the songs are torch songs. I researched on that also. So it's about when your love doesn't get reciprocated, and the misery that you feel. So I think a lot of people did connect on that as well.
They get other jokes too, like there are parts of the movie that are parodies of what was it called? You know, that TV series that changed India forever, the Ramayana show from the 80s. I forget, what was the
Ramanand
Doordarshan? Is that what it was called?
Yeah, it was on Doordarshan. The producer was Ramanand Sagar. I think he recently passed away. We were made to watch that as well.
Yeah, so I watched several of those. A friend of mine gave me his complete set, which his parents had given him and which he absolutely didn't want. So I had plenty to see, but there were just cinematic techniques in there that I was parodying. So there's the scene where Sita is in the garden of Ravana and she's resisting Ravana's advances. Okay. And I use this zoom technique over and over again, right?
Yes, like that happens in all TV serials here. Like, when something big happens, everybody has to have like this reaction, and then camera zooms in. Yeah, it's very
But the thing is that American audience, like non-Indian audiences, laugh their heads off at that. So they don't even know what it's a parody of, but they still find it hilarious. So that's good.
I did notice it's like when you showed every person's reaction when Sita was finally getting down into the ground, you showed every person's reaction. So this is something which is very common in the Indian TV series, that if something happens, you have to show every person's face and not just a whole scene, every person's face. I did see that. I mean, that was cool.
All right. Well, I guess it's cross-cultural. I guess it speaks. It's art. It is the Doordarshan or whatever, the Indian TV serial techniques are transcendent.
Doordarshan was like the first, I think the first TV channel ever When my parents were little, it was only Doordarshan. TV only had Doordarshan, and Doordarshan was from like, it's like government
Yeah.
authenticated. So
Yeah.
but with this work, you came into a completely different domain, and that's the free culture movement. So tell me, if I was someone who didn't know about it, how would you describe it?
Uh, Free culture. Well, free culture is just culture. And it only seems like a thing because we've all been indoctrinated into the religion of copyright.
Yes.
Uh, so it's just culture. Think about how culture worked for all of human existence. People would hear a song and they would sing a song.
Yes.
And they would tell a story and they would repeat the story. And that's actually how culture fundamentally works. And the freak thing is copyright. So why don't you tell me what copyright is?
So copyright, basically, I think, now that I was learning about you, I thought about it and I felt that, whenever any person, like any law student or, anyone who's getting acquainted with copyright, they get this feeling that copyright is the rule. And then, after the rule that, you come to the exceptions that come under fair use. And there's this, and afterwards, there's this weird part which talks about, like for me personally, about free culture. So that's how it's introduced. So there's always this layer that copyright, it's actually I think it's a negative right, where more than you having the right to exploit your work economically, you actually stop other people from exploiting on your work. So it's a negative right in that sense. And
yes, copyright is the right to, I want to say, to control other people's copies of your work, but there's not really that much control. It's just you can force people to destroy copies of your work, or you can threaten them with lawsuits if you have enough money. A lot of people think, a lot of artists think copyright is the right to make money off of your work, which is not true at all. You can totally make money off of your work without copyright. And again, if you think about the history of art and culture, people were professional artists and professional musicians, and they were making money from their work without any copyright laws existing at all. What's kind of weird about copyright is it's given, and I don't know if copyright has caused this or if it's just something else about modern Western culture. There is so much anxiety about copying now. Whereas historically, it was fine to copy. It was actually a sign of respect to copy great works, and nobody had this idea that something called originality was really important, And that's another thing about the religious art, at least in India, is you just see these same canonical scenes depicted over and over and over again.
And even in sculptures as well, like,
yeah,
Hindu gods, they have a different kind of sculpture, but you can still, with, even though nobody has seen, gods, but they still have, it's certain eye, the shape of the eye, you can tell, which god, is being worshipped. And then there's this Jain community also, they have their own gods, so their sculptures are also different, but you can tell that there are some similarities.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, that's actually a good and nice thing. And if you want to look for originality, if you look closely, you can see, that a different painter, their hand is different, or maybe they put different flowers in or something. There's a little bit of variation, but it's not like this requirement that everything has to look really different from everything else, because that's just not how human beings work. And if you look at Sita Sings the Blues, which, ironically, people praise for its originality, everything in there is a copy of something.
So do you ever feel like, I could have done this differently in terms of, my creative choice?
My only regret there's the scene after the trial by fire where Ram and Sita are, oh no, right before the trial by fire, where Ram and Sita are reunited and they're, running towards each other, and you hear,
This is hard.
what is, it's a Tchaikovsky, is it Romeo and Juliet? Anyway, you hear this romantic classical music. And when we were doing the sound design for that, I had used a clip of a recording of an orchestra doing that. But this is before I was really educated about copyright and free culture. The person supervising the sound said, "Oh, if you want to replace that with just a synthesizer version of it to avoid any potential copyright hassle with that little bit, we can make a little synthesized version." So what you hear in the movie is the synthesized version because I chose to go with the synthesized version. And that is my only regret. I wish I had kept
You were more bold. bolder.
Yes, I'm much, much bolder now. But I didn't know nearly as much back then, and I was scared. So,
My favorite part was, I think you had it to the T. My favorite part was the intermission part where all these people, and you hear conversations and Indian conversations that I thought it was a kids movie, but it's not a kids movie. I don't know what that is. It was to the T.
Excellent. Yeah, I had to just leave that. I had to leave that to the people doing the conversations, obviously, because I don't know what they were saying. But yeah, if you are ever, not that it's ever going to be in like a really great cinema with a really great sound system, but that was very carefully designed, and depending on where you're sitting in the theater, you can hear some of the voices louder than
sitting on the
others.
right hand side, you would hear it very, clear.
Yeah. I can't take credit for that because I was just like, just say something, just say some stuff. I don't know what you're saying.
That was good. So, ma'am, when you talk about copyright, so the main argument is that it's, it's there to protect the bond, like the symbiotic relationship between the art and the artist. So do you feel like without copyright also, do you feel that kind of bond?
Without copyright? Yeah. I mean, there's this Khalil Gibran line from The Prophet. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for themselves. And a lot of artists compare, and non-artists compare, they say that your art is like your child, right? And it comes through you, but it is not of you, right? Like if you have a child, you're not, building, your ego has nothing to do with it, right? That's just going to happen. And if you're doing it right, you just let that process happen and then you let it go. So it's true that when you initially finish something, or when I initially finish something, I feel a kind of attachment to it. I want to see it do well in the world. I want everyone to say it's pretty. But after a while, you have to move on. You have to give it to the world, right? Like a child, if you just like cling to your child and control everything about it, it's going to be messed up. And then if you think about doing that for 90 years, like maybe, you need to, well, in the US, you're an adult when you're 18. So you're responsible for your child for 18 years. That's, a long time for a piece of art. I figure a piece of art, a year or two, but it has to be in the world. And for art to be meaningful, like I feel like my art is not done until it's shared, until other people are interacting with it. And then it can take on a kind of cultural value that comes from the audience and not from me. I can't give it cultural value, right? Like I can, when I make a piece, I just am like, I just want as many people to see this as possible, which is not easy nowadays because there's just so much competition for attention.
But did you always feel like that? Like when you were a budding artist, were your thoughts always like that? Or, what happened? How did it shift?
Oh, yeah. Well, right. Before Sita, before I was radicalized, I thought like, oh, this is my intellectual property. Like this is some form of wealth and I have to protect it the same way I would protect a pile of money. And I did that, right? I did that. You know, I've been doing art professionally since I was in my late teens, and it didn't really serve me at all. I mean, I remained pretty obscure for a long time. So, and it's not like I have years worth of syndicated comic strips that I drew, older books. I just have a pile of work in my history, and I'm not making any money from that, and nobody's seeing it, right? All that stuff was copyrighted, and you know, the result of that is it's, you know, the originals are in a drawer somewhere and nobody cares. So, you know, with the release of Sita and me having to like really question copyright for the first time, that was when I realized that I was not, you know, it's like maybe I'm sitting on a pile of money, but it's not acting like money. You know, it's not like I can spend it or use it. Nobody wants my so-called intellectual property because nobody knows about it. And therefore it doesn't have any cultural value, or it has very little cultural value.
But when you think about attribution, so I guess in the US, economic rights are, you know, pressed about more than the moral rights. When I think about it from the Indian perspective, I feel that a lot of artists, you know, they've been, you know, they've been born and brought up to understand that they have to balance, you know, this economic and moral right, and they would always choose the moral right. So, you know, do you sometimes feel that you lose on that as well when people copy from your work?
I love it when people copy from my work. I really do. No, I cannot even tell you how amazed I feel, but I'm in a secure position, right? Like I have a reputation. I have, you know, most people can figure out that this was copied from something of mine, or we can trace it. And so for me, it just enhances my reputation, right? Like it just enhances my esteem, and it makes me feel great because it's like, wow, I did something that somebody liked enough to copy and share in this other way.
Do you feel maybe you got lucky in this, because a lot of other artists do not? So I was, you know, I was listening to a podcast on NPR, and I'm a little late to that, but they were talking about joke theft. So I don't know if you've seen this meme where, you know, Kanye is kissing Kanye, uh, Kim's husband, ex-husband Kanye, who goes by Ye. So he's kissing himself. Actually, he was kissing Kim on like an award show red carpet, but you know, the person who edited it, she edited it in such a way that, you know, it was shown that, you know, Kanye loves nobody else more than he loves himself. So there was this picture where Kanye is kissing Kanye, and you know, it did not like sit well with people. But then there was this other platform who shares memes from other people, and they shared it, and I think it got like you know, millions of views, and people attributed the work to, you know, that I think it was I'm sorry to use the word, fuck Jerry. So that's the name of the handle, Insta handle that shared it. And so,
I see. Yes, that happens a lot. Misattribution happens all the time on the internet. And again, I do feel pretty secure, because when it does happen to me, I'm secure enough, you know, my reputation is known enough so that I don't see that as a threat. And frequently people correct misattributions if they know. Sometimes I'll see people sharing my work without attribution or with a misattribution, and somebody else will come along and say, hey, that's by Nina Paley. And I'm sure this is happening over and over again without me seeing anything. But I've made my peace with this, right? Like I've spiritually made my peace with it. And I have to say, when I did finally have my moment of just completely letting go of copyright, I felt so much relief. Like I had been carrying all this anxiety and anger, really, and defensiveness as an artist that I didn't need. But that's just my path. But yeah, attribution, you know, it's an issue. It's like, how do you make sure things are attributed appropriately. And you can't really, that's not really the way the internet works. I do, again, appreciate people popping in and saying, hey, this is attributed to whoever, that's who made it. Now, copyright, as you know, is separate from attribution, at least in the United States. These are not the same thing at all. Attribution is
Attribution is like more common in Europe. I think Indian society also in the Copyright Act. So the right of paternity and integrity.
So it's a moral right.
Yeah,
a moral right, which I don't personally care about. What was I gonna say? Yeah, I mean, I just feel like as an artist, if I publish my work, I've made it public, right?
Yes.
That means that the energy of the work now is coming from the audience. That the creation of it came from me, and I can still put some energy into it because audiences generally care about the creators or the authors, but it's in the hands of the audience now. And I have no business telling other people, like controlling other people's relationship with that work. I just don't, any more than anybody has the right to tell me what my relationship to the Ramayana should be, or what my relationship to the Bible should be, or any of these public domain cultural works that are shared. They need to be public, right? Like it's public freedom to interact with the work however. And but we were talking about attribution and plagiarism. I had some idea on that. Oh, right. Just that to really be able to control it, there's no way to control that stuff without infringing on the rights of your audience, really. And they have to have the right to screw up. Oh, and that, right, I know what it is. It's that people don't understand copyright. They're so terrified of copyright. They're so terrified that they're going to make some mistake that's going to lead to jail, right? Yeah. That actually keeps them from attributing things, because they think that if they attribute somebody, then that person will be able to find them and sue them, because they don't know how copyright works, right? They just have this sense of anxiety. And I wish that could be lifted, because I think that I just wish people could be more relaxed about it, and not worry that if they said, oh, this is by such and so, and like tag such and so, that if they do that, they're inviting such and so to come and threaten a lawsuit or jail or something.
I think that's related to what I said before, that they think that copyright is the rule and then fair use is the exception to it. And then out of the Venn diagram, there's this other part which talks about free culture as well. So I think because that's not a part of the legal education curriculum, so I think that's why people are so afraid of just scratching a little bit of that surface as well. So I think attribution that way is scarier than actually copying it and not letting the other person know about it at all. So it hangs like a thread, because currently not in the US, but I think in the Indian perspective, you can claim it like years and years later as well. So it's like a all time, I'm hanging by a thread all these years that I know that I've used and I've worked on the other person. And in continuation to that, so like I said that there's this concept of fair use as well. So why not twitch the work a little, that it's transformative. It comes, the government gives me the right to use other person's work. I just have to twitch it to make it transformative, and so that I'm not infringing. Then why this need for this whole other culture?
Wait, so you're saying, why don't people just modify works a little bit when I'm actually glad they don't, because modifying something for the sake of modifying it, just so that, because of copyright law, that's putting law ahead of culture. A thing might be perfect the way it is, and you might just want to share it. I actually found this when I was doing a lot of media interviews when Sita was first out. I got tons of media inquiries. And I wrote a bunch about Sita Sings the Blues, and then journalists, not very good journalists, would write about it, and they would just get the facts wrong over and over again. And I'd just be like, look, if you want to share the story, it's been written about. Here it is.
Yeah.
Here's like all the stuff. And it's like
they
didn't want to do that, right? They had to do something creative to like justify that they were writing a story, and inevitably they would get stuff wrong. And I'm like, don't, like, please just copy this verbatim. It's facts. Yeah.
I think with the media people, I think it's very they are in a different zone about infringing, even though there's this idea on the Raman is just an idea. So the idea can't be copyrighted, but they still want to have some control over what general people see in the way they report. So they have to like twitch it a little bit here and a little bit there, so as to claim it as their own and to be called like a to have actually be reporting on something. So I think these are like media principles as well that stop people from copying as such.
Yeah, and it's like I feel like as an artist, I need to, the most important thing is the work, is the culture itself. And I can see all these ways that copyright or anxiety about copyright makes the work worse. So what I am trying to do as an artist is minimize or ideally eliminate that interference of law, because it's affected all of us artists.
Yes.
So I want to remove this compulsion to be original and instead focus on like, what am I trying to communicate? Like, why is this important to me? What's actually good? If this thing is good exactly the way it is, then leave it alone.
But does it not afraid you? Because at most places IP breach is like a civil liability, but in the US it has like a criminal liability also attached to it.
In the US we have fair use. So even the problem with fair use is that it's a total mushy gray area.
Yeah.
But I assert that all of my uses are fair use. The issue, though, is not that I'm doing something illegal. The issue is that no distributors will touch what I do.
Okay.
So
you distributed yourself.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah, and the people, they do it for you. I read about the Sita distribution project also. So how does that work? I mean, if you
Yeah, well, the Sita distribution project was, this was in 2008, 2009. So it was a different age, right? Yeah. The internet was a different place back then. It was very successful. We just wanted people to share the film as much as possible and show it as much as possible. And if they had money, if they wanted to send a donation, that would be great. If they charge for tickets, they can. They didn't have to. We acknowledged that theater operators have expenses and they should cover their own expenses. And that it was a voluntary thing. So again, the goal from that was just to get as many people to see it as possible. And it was a magical time. The internet was probably at its peak of freedom and culture and things like that. And I don't think
it was also the time where when things like Napster and all were also very common.
Yeah.
The music sharing.
They hadn't died yet. And the anxiety of the industry was like, we can't let people share our films. We have to lock them down. If they'll get out everywhere. And I was like, ooh, they'll get out everywhere. Let's see how far this can go.
It reached to me. And so one of the free culture, I don't want to say free culture, but like software free activist, his name is Richard Stallman.
Richard Stallman, yes, he's the original. He's the most famous.
So, something clicked to me when, I read that he said somewhere that, there has to be 3 layers to, this movement. So on the top layer should be, things related to software and practical use, and they should be like completely free for people to build upon, because that's the objective of copyright as well, that, you push people to, be creative and, to make something. And then there's the second layer where you only share the information, like works that are informative. So you can share my work, but you cannot build on it. And on the bottom line was art and music, and he said that there's no need for art and music to be free. They are creative works, and yeah, if need be, the copyright could be reduced from life plus 70 to just like 10-12 years. So do you have a take on that?
Yes, Stallman and I disagree about this completely. I have written rants about Stallman's basically privileging software over the other aspects of culture. So yes, that is a big philosophical divide we have. And he wants software to be free because he understands the importance of software in society, but I feel like he doesn't understand the importance of art in society, that he doesn't respect art the way he respects software, because admittedly his thing is software. He's not an artist. Older. So much has happened since 2008, which is especially regarding the internet and politics of the internet. So you may or may not know that both Richard Stallman and I got canceled.
Yeah,
I don't know if
no,
for different reasons, but both canceled. And I was appalled by the way the free software community treated Richard when he was being canceled. And I'm also appalled by the way the free software community has treated me in terms of cultural cancellation. So even though Richard and I have this huge difference about free culture, we are siblings, and we are sibling scapegoats.
Yeah, the baseline is same.
Modern culture wars, yes. And those culture wars have really screwed. It's a different world now, and I have seen how they suppress the flow of information as much as copyright does, maybe even more, just differently. It's been really disappointing because the internet was this wonderful free place where you could root around censorship, and everybody's a censor now.
Yes.
So stuff just doesn't spread freely. And this is not, I mean, I suppose it's related to copyright, because I think everybody being indoctrinated into copyright has made everybody authoritarian socially.
Yes.
So that they feel that controlling information is an entitlement and that it's important to do.
Also because people are more aware now.
Years ago, Americans were just as anxious about copying and felt just as entitled to anything that they made or drew or said. I don't think that anxiety is historically as much part of Indian culture. Like when I was there, people seemed very relaxed about it. And what I'm interpreting what you are saying as they're less relaxed about it now because of copyright.
Yes.
So now in India, now in India, people are feeling like they should be able to control whatever they make, and that art is less communal and more individualistic because you're not making it as part of a community, you're making it as an individual and you're claiming individual ownership to it.
More than they want it, they feel like they have to, because there are these standards in how you run your company, whether you have 10 employees or 100. There's this supposed to be culture now where they feel that they have to, if they do not assert their rights, more than other people copying, they are more worried about their competitors or people that they know about. So they feel that they have to assert their rights so that they can get ahead at least ahead than their competitors. So it's not against the general public. I think it's a few people that they're worried about in India at least. So
any Indians listening to this, please make copies of my work. I was told that if I didn't copyright the stuff, that there would be, sippy bottles and t-shirts and make the stuff already, people. I want to see it. Maybe I'll even buy some. I have a new project that that I really want to exist in the world. And I'm just like, how do I push this out? Right. I made it. I told everyone about it. And it's like, well, now what? I don't know. I just want people to make copies of it.
Animated?
Yes, Apocalypse Animated. It needs to be exploited somehow. Problem is that I don't actually have a system set up to make money from that.
Okay.
And I realize most people do things to make money. If I figure out how to make money, then yeah.
So when talking about money, do you think that I don't know? Do you think that free culture is if I'm an artist and if I'm someone that I know that people are going to copy my work and going to infringe on my work, so why not make it like open, give a license to the world to build on my work? But do you think corporations also do that? Have you come across an example where corporations who can sue people for infringing didn't actually?
I don't know. I mean, one thing that's happening is the reality is that people copy lots of stuff, whether it's legal or not. And 10 years ago or 12 years ago, corporations were fighting this tooth and nail. They may have realized that that is a stupid way to spend their money and energy because it's going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't think they need to actually offer things under a free license. I think if they may just know that people are copying things and have figured out that there's other ways or that doesn't have to impact their income stream at all. Like they can release premium products. They can, like a lot of musicians realize that the money was actually in performances. Of course, the 2 years of a pandemic has made that really awful for musicians.
Yeah.
But there's always been other ways to make money, and most artists don't realize that most of their money does not come from copyright. Very little of it comes from copyright. Most artists make their money from commissions. Yeah. And that's how free software works too, right? Like you pay people to make a piece of software and then other people can use that software. Sure, but somebody paid you to do it. So there's commissions, there's patronage, there's performances. And yeah, I've talked to a lot of artists that really believe that they're making their money from copyright when that is not how they're making their money. And you can even make royalties without copyright. You can still sign a royalty agreement with people, even if it's free culture. A lot of industries are just set up. They're set up with a royalty system where they believe it's based on copyright, but it doesn't have to be. It's like you're just like, like they want me to grant them the rights, right? Like they want a contract where it's like, please grant us the rights. And if I say, well, you already have the rights, you don't need a contract, then I never hear from them again. But if I say, okay, here you go, non-exclusive rights, they happen to not, it's like they don't care. They just have the system that's already in. So it's like, here's your non-exclusive rights. And they're like, here's your royalties. and it's completely unnecessary for them, but the culture is so deeply ingrained that they prefer to just act as if they're having to pay for these rights. And that's fine. I'm happy to get royalties. I have royalties coming in from some places.
But while we are talking about money and everything, but there are certain aspects of culture also that it's just an idea and it can't actually be copyrighted, and it's very similar to I think I read about jokes as well. So a lot of people say it was on a podcast only, and a comedian was a guest, and he said that we actually don't, claim infringement. It's very expensive. And so, we have like a moral policing. So, if one comedian is copying from another comedian, we have like a moral police, and, will not make that person a part of, certain gigs, and will avoid that person. And if nothing works, violence. So with the free culture, and the licenses, the Creative Commons license, and who does the policing, and does law help you in some way?
Well, that's why I changed the license of Sita Sings the Blues from a share alike license to a public domain dedication, because I realized that I was not going to enforce share alike. So for those who don't know, share alike is technically a free culture license, but it requires that any use, any redistribution of the work, including modifications, be released under also a free license. And that works in free software. What?
Do people follow that?
No, and the main reason people don't follow it is because they're just confused. I am amazed by how confused people, or I was amazed by how confused people are about copyright. It really takes a lot of interest to sort out different licenses and what they mean. So many people thought with Sita that the free license meant that I was prohibiting commercial use, or that share alike meant that I was prohibiting commercial use. And I was not prohibiting commercial use. I wanted to encourage commercial use, but it was just a losing battle trying to explain to people what it was. So eventually I just was like, public domain, do whatever you want. I'm not going to take any legal action. I'm just not. And that's the issue with free licenses, is they're still based in copyright, and copyright is based in the threat of legal action. And I just don't want to do that. Sorry, because I know that affects.
Yeah, that the basic premise of copyright is also negative, and like you said that you are benefiting from it, but before you entered into it, what evidence was there that it would be beneficial to take this path, and rather than being stuck here?
Wait, before I entered into what?
The free culture movement. The premise of copyright is that people want to steal my work. So I have to protect my work. People want to steal my work. But you say in your blogs all the time that you feel that people want to support artists, and they have a genuine interest in the artist's success. So did you see any evidence, or you jumped right into it, or was it
right?
you?
I was backed into a corner, really. So there was no evidence, or there was very little evidence. The only evidence that was there was from the free culture movement, or the free software movement. Sorry, I am the free culture movement. The free software movement. Yeah. So it was like, well, this seems to work in free software, but this is going to be an experiment with my film. But I did it because I had this film. I had been going to festivals for a year. I had no major distributor. There was no way I could afford the money that was being demanded. And also talking to other filmmakers, it became clear to me that conventional distribution was very little money. So that even if I did, if I paid like, I don't know, $250,000 to clear the music so that a distributor would accept it, I was never going to get that $250,000 back. Yeah. And that would just be a stupid thing. I did have to pay like $70,000 to make it legal to share, but $70,000 is a lot less than $250,000. Yeah, but anyway, after a year, I was like, I want people to see this film. Why did I make this film if not for people to see it? And I'm not going to make money going through conventional distribution, even if it's a relative success for an independent film. There's just no way. So I was like, I have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And that's why I did it. And then it was amazing. It's like, I had never made more money in my life than when I freed that film. I could not believe it.
This is one more thing that in the I think in the copywriter's brain damage TEDx that you did, that you said that, the music was supposed to, the uh, Emmett Henshaw music was supposed to be in the public domain, but because of
Mhm.
continuous extensions, it was not. So with the I've noticed with the extensions in the copyright law in the US, an argument that's very popular is that an artist doesn't just create an art for herself. She also does it for her kids and her future generations. So that's why there's this thing where if I'm alive and I've licensed my work, then a lot of times when I die or after a certain time, my offspring can review the licensing terms and can decide if they want to continue or not. In this, do you think, like, if as an artist I feel like I have to share my work with the public, do you think this is a family conversation? Should it be?
It should not be, no. Mark Twain was famous for that argument. And my argument back to that is, look, exploit your work, make money, and invest the money, and your kids can inherit the money, right? Yeah. It's like, if you can, copyright is supposed to be for limited terms. Let's say it lasts for, 7 or 8 years, which is still way too long, but it would be a huge improvement. That's when most money is made off of works.
Yeah.
So make the money, and then you have some money that your kids can inherit.
Yeah, because while I was reading all, it's a very weird argument that life plus 70, like I think everybody questions that. Life, we understand that for your life, it's your property, you should like reap the benefits out of it. But then after that, people don't understand the logic behind it. And a few of the I think while this was a discussion going on in the US, they talked about that it's not just for me, it's for my kids as well. So my kids also have a security, and if someone has to benefit from my work, it should like be my kids. So I think it's based on that premises that it kept getting like extended.
Yeah, and of course it's just these legacy corporations that want it to keep being
Yes.
extended.
Apart from
but I will say that living things are not property. And it's such a completely different approach to culture to call it property. Because for me, culture it's a living thing. It's something like an emergent property of people communicating with each other. It's a social thing. And if you treat it as property, you kill it, really. And there's evidence of that in some of the worst mainstream media, which is, a lot of mainstream media is quite terrible. It feels dead, right? It feels really formulaic, same thing over and over again. It's stagnant.
Yeah.
Now the internet and just the way the internet's been evolving changes all of this, but I'm actually starting to get tired
of these evolutions.
No, my mouth is starting to run out. Like, if I keep talking, I'm going to start saying increasingly stupid things. So we should probably continue this another time if you want to continue talking.
Definitely. Thank you
Okay.
so much. And I hope that, Indian artists have learned something about our conversation today.
Hope so.